Hello and welcome to the Gambling Files podcast, the podcast that may or may not have read a book at the weekend. I'm one of your hosts, John Bruford, joined by your other host, the behatted Fintan Costello. Fintan, hello.
Hello, John.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Great. I'm not going to talk about your hat just now, other than to say that you're wearing one, because we do cover that on this episode with Scott Longley of And More Media fame.
We do. Publishing Overlord.
As he
likes to be called.
P.O. We just like to call him the Big Chief.
The Big Chief. The biggest chief.
For reasons that will become clear if you listen to the rest of the episode.
The Chief Executive Officer.
Really, he really is. I'd like to be a CCO one day. I'd like to be a Chief Officer. But Fintan, so yeah. you did your race at the weekend. We also talk about that with Scott. But you were threatening to read a book that I'd sent you. Did you read it?
I haven't finished reading it, but I am reading it.
Fintan.
I had to look. There'd been
Do you
such
have to
a gap.
stop and look each word up?
There'd been such a gap when I started reading the book, and this weekend, it was just easier to go back to the beginning and restart. So I'm basically caught up to where I was, and now I'm reading it every day. I don't know. I'm a slow reader. I don't know what it is. But I'm working my way through the book now.
Okay. Well, you will be tested next week.
I'm not going to be finished by next week. I've stuff to do, mate. I don't have reading time. I've got to. I read in bed before I fall asleep. That's my thing. So it's, and then depending on how tired I am, maybe it's a page, maybe it's a line. Oh, fuck this. Or, it'll be a chapter. We'll see.
Okay.
But I am reading it. I'm definitely reading. It's such a beautiful, well-written book, and it's such a beautiful story. I'm really enjoying it as well. And it's not a book I'd have ever picked up. So,
Fintan, it's not me you need to suck up to.
No, it was a thoughtful gift.
Do you know what? We could probably get Liz on as a guest.
Let me read the book first before we do that, because Jesus Christ.
But in the interest of full transparency, I haven't read it yet.
Yes, you have.
No, I haven't.
Well, there's a thing you told me there's some scene in the book or something. That's why you got me the book, or there's something in the.
Yeah.
Or you just fucking me. I got to the end. What was the scene? Oh, I don't know. Do you want to make you read it?
No, see, I remember. So a while ago, so my friend Liz wrote the book. Liz Hyder wrote the book, and a while ago she. This is actually unrelated. It just made me fucking laugh so much when it happened. I must have told you this, but there's a mock horror author in the UK called Garth Marenghi. Fans of cult TV stuff will know Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, and he's a pastiche of 1980s horror authors. Very, very funny man. He's also a very accomplished filmmaker and writer in his own right. I mean, the guy that plays him, a guy called Matthew Holness. And Liz messaged me to say, have you read the Garth Marenghi book yet? It was called Teratome, and it was highly amusing. And I hadn't bought it at that point. She's like, you've got to buy it and drop whatever you're reading and just read this straight away. I'm like, And I was going to buy it, but I was probably going to wait for the paperback. But I saw a really good offer somewhere. I'm like, okay, I'll get it. So I get it and I'm reading it. And she's like, you'll know when you get to the scene that I'm talking about, because it's a real what the fuck moment. And there's a scene in a book where the main character decides he's going to go and see his best mate and ask for advice. And then he's like, I'm going to go see my best friend. He always gives me good advice. I haven't seen Bruford for ages. And I'm like, my surname is seriously unusual. I mean, like, there's hardly any Brufords in the world, despite my brother's best efforts. And that wasn't the what the fuck moment, though. The what the fuck moment was like a chapter and a half later when you discover that Bruford is a psychic dugong.
The psychic dugong, whatever that is. So you're saying is
it's like a manatee.
In this book I'm reading, there's reference to the Gambling Files podcast.
No, there isn't, sadly. But that's why on my Twitter bio it says John Bruford, psychic dugong, opinions my own. Just in case you were wondering. Yeah, it's like a manatee or a narwhal sort of thing, you know.
Just one of those made-up animals.
No, they're definitely real, Fintan. You're thinking of unicorns, mermaids.
Well, it's like the joke, like unicorns are fantasy, but giraffes exist, right? It's that kind of, a horse with a horn versus a giraffe. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it is the reality that we live in. So it does make sense once you accept reality.
I reject your reality.
Giraffes are awesome. Have you seen their big purple tongues? They are fabulous, though. I'm a big fan of a good giraffe. But it reminds me, this is a true story. I was in this pub once. This bloke walked in with his best mate. It was a giraffe. And they got shit-faced drunk at the bar. Shit-faced drunk. They were there all afternoon just laughing and joking. And they get up to leave and the bloke stumbles out. And a giraffe stumbling behind him, big long legs. Giraffe fucking keels over, passes out in the middle of the bar. And the barman goes, "Can't leave that lying there." He goes, "It's not a lion, it's a giraffe."
It's a classic.
It really is. It's a big, big favourite of mine. But anyway,
talking of big favourites,
Mm-hmm.
We should maybe mention some of our sponsors.
That is a very good idea. I'd like to mention. I'm going to mention Be Wise Media and their sports media buying expertise. Now, they might be awful people. I don't know. We only know Sebastian. But Sebastian's great. Sebastian Paris, well worth a follow on LinkedIn, by the way, because he does put some very salient posts, and not in a "oh my god, he's discovered AI" way either. There's a lot of that about. Have you spotted those? Shit, there's a lot of AI posts out there now.
Oh, sure, everyone's got an AI. It's never been easier to launch an AI.
Yeah, I'm tending to rely more on my own brain. But I'm not dissing people for doing that. But you should take out the bit at the end where it says "in conclusion" and the bulleted lists. Those are two of the big giveaways.
Or the disclaimer. Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is not intended to be advice you should act upon. So I'm a big fan of Be Wise Media. And one of the big things about Be Wise Media, Fintan, is their exclusive relationships. Did you know about those?
I did know about those.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't bring it up again. Have you got a favourite sponsor?
Tell people. I do. Okay. My favourite sponsor this week is, I've lots of favourite sponsors, but this week's favourite sponsor is Clarion Gaming.
I've heard of them.
Yeah. And they are people behind events such as the IGB Affiliate 2024, taking place in London, XL in London, the 6th to the 9th of February.
It's amazing that you've memorized this as well.
Well, I got the email. I got the registration email the other day, and I thought I'm going to keep that because that'll be quite useful. So registrations are open. It's free for affiliates to attend. You just need to go through the registration process. The IGB Affiliate Awards are on the 8th of February. Affiliate registration closes on 25th of January. There can be a bit of a queue, a bit of a delay getting your stuff approved, so it's better to get it in early, get those meetings booked. I haven't had a meeting request. My record so far is first week of December to have a meeting booked for ICE or for IGB Affiliate in London. So we'll see if we can beat that this year.
Anybody listening, you know what to do.
Well, it is one of those things of like, book your meetings early, people.
That's a gauntlet thrown down.
Before. don't be leaving it to the week before. It's too late.
And we are discussing as well a live podcast experience at ICE. It's not totally firmed up yet, but there's a good chance we're going to be doing a podcast experience. No, we've told them.
We've thought about it, and
there's been discussions about merchandise, all kinds of good shit.
That'd be hilarious.
Especially if I can get the wanking thing on it, which you'll find in this episode with Scott Longley. Scott is here. Sorry, what?
We could do a run club. We could do a little Gambling Files.
You could do
morning
a run
jog.
Club. You could.
We could.
Dude, I'm arthritic.
Just hearing excuses. Excuses.
Last time I went for a run, I was in pain for a whole week afterwards. I mean, I'll try it again just because I'm stupid. But sure, fuck it, why not? Scott is here talking about the Reputation Matters event. And we have a long conversation about affordability checks and why it's getting people's backs up and potential ways out, and good things, positives, negatives. I think we go all over the place, really, don't we?
No, Scott's very good at keeping us on topic.
No, we go all over the place within that topic.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Very much so. And Scott's super clever, and he's thought about this a lot, and he's talked to a lot of experts and stuff as well. So some really good insights and perspectives. And yeah, I think it's there's some issues.
Yes, I agree. Enjoy the episode. We joined to this week's guest. I believe we're only doing the one episode this week, and we're joined by the venerable, not to be confused with venereal, Scott Longley of And More Media, the group we like to refer to as our publishing overlords. Scott Longley, welcome.
Thank you, John. How are you?
Do you know what? I'm all right.
Mm-hmm. That's a start.
As good as it gets at the moment, I think. How are you?
I'm very well. Yeah, very well. The sun is shining. Life is sweet. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Fintan.
Hey, Scott.
So, what is on your hat?
Yeah, what's on your hat, Fintan?
Glad you asked.
It just makes me wish we had a video version.
I nearly wore the medal. I was going to do you mean this?
If you ever do a race that gets a belt buckle for a time cut off, you'll have it welded to your head, won't you?
Okay, so the race. So I did a race at the weekend. I did an ultra run at the weekend. Kuhlamannen in Sweden. 103 kilometers. Oof. And I did it just under literally like a minute under 16 hours. So 15 hours if anybody asks. And I'm a sucker for the swag, so I literally bought the baseball hat.
Brilliant.
But talking about belt buckles, the 100-mile version of the race, if you complete it 3 times, they give you a ring. And it's like a big chunky kind of like thingy type ring.
Like a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, that kind of it's kind of the little character, the myth thing that the race is built around. But yeah, that kind of big chunky obnoxious thing. And then if you do it 5 times, you get a diamond ring.
Holy shit, sign me up.
If
my body lasts that long,
I am tempted.
I'm in. But yeah, those
just have just a handful of these rings.
Yeah, seriously, it'd be like your fighting outfit.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, Fintan, you've never met Tom, a friend of the podcast, Tom Neiman, in the flesh, have you?
No, when he spoke to him.
Tom's got his. He's got hands like shovels.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's kind of farmer hands, kind of thing, is it? That kind of. But
he's got American football player hands. And he's got a Rose Bowl ring.
I totally wear that everywhere.
Oh, he does.
Everywhere.
I think it was I might be wrong about this. It was 73 or 74 Michigan State team. He made it to the Rose Bowl, which is pretty amazing.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty special. I mean, Tom's had one of those lives. You know what I mean? He's had one of those lives where you think, how did you fit all that in? I can barely get out of bed in the morning to just do my fucking work. I mean, some people think like that. Obviously, I don't. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, "Day, I'm going to crush you," and I jump out of bed and I do all my exercises, and then I run the dog.
Journal, meditate, greet the sun, activated water.
Because by then it's 5. And my working day is really just starting. I should post more about this on LinkedIn. I feel
bash out your 5,000 words for your screenplay, and then go for breakfast. Right?
That's the thing. Though. Part of me wants to parody those things on LinkedIn when people do that shit, and it drives me fucking mental when people do that. But I want to do like a Bruford version one. You know, woke up at 5. I've already masturbated twice. I'm going back to sleep. That'll teach them, and then tag everybody I've ever seen do one of those. Yeah, well, you know, if you want to get ahead, you've got to be a lion or some shit like that. Fucking people. But anyway, Scott, we didn't get you here to talk about masturbation. Not just
your morning routine.
No.
Not just. Not that should be your subheading on the podcast, John. Not just wanking.
Fintan. Merch.
Moisturizer. Oh, that'd be hilarious. I mean,
no, but Scott, we wanted you to come on so you could tell us about your event that was like the other week.
Yeah, did the Reputation Matters afternoon, which
that one.
Yeah, that took place in the Barbican in London.
Did you conclude that reputation does matter?
Well, here's the key to this, John. The name of the event was suited to different content, but we kept the name because that's, once you've got a name, you've got a name, haven't you? So it wasn't really about reputation. It was more around, basically it was a debate around the white paper, the UK Gambling Commission and the white paper, with various luminaries, including ex-PHA chief Nick Russ, Tom Kerr from the Racing Post, Stephen Ketley from Wigan, the lawyers who gratefully sponsored it. And various other luminaries discussing the white paper and where the commission has gone wrong.
Well, the problem is, I guess, that there's, and I'm not dissing an event like this by any stretch of the imagination because
please do.
Clarification of...
I'm just waiting for the but.
Yeah. No, but
there we go.
We're in the consultation period, aren't we? And there's a lot of conversations being had. And we don't really have any indication. Well, we won't have any indication until it all fucking gets sewn up.
No, I'm not so sure about that. I think we know the direction of travel here, and that was a takeaway from the conference, was that I think people are worried about where the commission is heading when it comes to financial risk checks, and more to the point, I think there's a worry around what the commission is saying about financial risk checks versus what the reality of what is going to be in the final documents. And it comes down to this raging debate around frictionless checks. And is there such a thing? Or what do people mean by frictionless checks? What does the industry think about it? What do the providers think about frictionless checks? And more importantly, what the commission and the government think about frictionless checks, or what constitutes a frictionless check. And I think there's every indication, going from this conference, but also going from a lot of other commentary currently, that what the commission and the government think about frictionless checks might actually be different, which doesn't help the situation.
Crikey. We were finding out about frictionless checks on an episode last week with Jeremy Lever. Jeremy Lever.
Yes.
I've done it again. Jeremy Lever.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeremy.
So I think the what it comes down to is it's a conversation around open banking, as you know, analytics would obviously be part of that, along with others providers, people you've had on the podcast. And the question is whether or not you think that open banking is a necessary step next for friction for financial risk checks. And there's a school of thought which I think I probably subscribe to, which is partly driven by Department of Trust, talking to them, but also talking to analytics and talking to ClearStake as well, is that the best way to achieve a relatively frictionless journey for the customer is via open banking. Now that sounds like a bit of a step too far for people, certainly people reading the Racing Post. But that isn't a frictionless check that the government, that the GC consistently says that it wants. It says it wants a frictionless check, but what it's actually pushing for when it comes to the checks that are going to be involved with financial risk are not frictionless. Open banking is not a frictionless check. It's as near as it can be relatively friction free, but it's not a frictionless check. And I think the language is important here because the trust in the Gambling Commission diminishes with every time they try and stand by this idea that they're introducing frictionless checks, when actually we know that what they're talking about is not frictionless.
So that's a really good point, because if you take the word, like, frictionless should be, I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Yes,
right?
exactly.
That's like, it's if I like, I'm watching Netflix. So the example of frictionless is I'm watching Netflix on my TV. I turn off the TV, and then later on I take out my iPad and I pick up exactly where I left off.
Exactly. Yeah.
In that episode from the TV, right? That's frictionless. Yes. I don't have to do anything. It's just, it remembers and it knows me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a big fan of the open banking solutions. I think that makes a lot of sense for this, for a lot of reasons. Yeah. But I still need to grant permission for that open banking system, and I'll probably have to do a few. Now, it's so straight away, that's not, now it's easier than photocopying my bank statements and scanning them and emailing them in. That's high friction.
Yeah.
But even with the open banking, it's not frictionless.
No, it's not.
If we're being really strict on like definition.
So frictionless in when it comes to the gambling space tends to be it's the idea that you've got the CRAs, who do their checks based on whether you've got a CCJ against your name, whether your address verifies, and all various information around who you are and are you who you say you are, which can be done based on their databases and is done without any need to reference to the consumer and say you've got to tick this box to allow this. I mean, when you do your sign on for an account, those checks take place regardless of who you are.
Yeah.
And regardless of financial risk checks or anything like that, it's just a matter of identifying who you are. Are you who you say you are? Does your bank account match details? Does your address details match? Are there CCJs against you? Are you a politically exposed person? All that kind of check takes place. That is frictionless. There's no extra level of the consumer having to do anything there. And like you say, if at some point somebody has to check who you are by checking your passport, that's clearly friction-full. And at that point, that becomes that's a different level of check at that point. But that level where all this stuff happens in the background when you sign up to an operator, that is frictionless. Now, the CRAs apparently, in talking to the Commission, have said, well, we can do the financial risk checks you're talking about at exactly the same way with the data we already have. And I think I'd be cautious about this, but I think they're lying because they haven't got that data.
Like, how could they? Because you could do I'm just thinking about, like, you could do a credit reference check.
Mm-hmm.
You could you could see what I've been authorized, like my credit card limit.
Yeah.
And you could infer a lot from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the current stuff they've got. That's the stuff that currently
like
the CRAs
they wouldn't know, but they wouldn't know my incoming and outgoing transactions on a bank account.
No,
to know if I can afford that €1,000 bet or whatever.
That's right. Yeah, and to get that kind of level of information, obviously open banking is one route, but the other route is you can do it via other means. But it does mean having to ask the consumer for permission, which means introducing a level of friction. You have to ask for
the other means? What are the other means? There's
and forgive me my knowledge on the kind of level of data you can get in a bank account, but there's other means other than open banking. That's not full open banking, but it's a level of knowledge around people's bank account details and its transaction history that you can ascertain. You can gain information on that from the banks, but it does mean that you have to get permission from the consumer to access their bank account for that. That's clearly friction. Now, if the CRAs are saying that that's a frictionless check, then that's lying. And if the commission says that that's a frictionless check, then they're lying. And I don't want to get. I don't think it's about getting bogged down about whether something is a frictionless check or not. The point about the reason why I think this is important is the industry and the commission have got low levels of trust right now, lowest levels we've probably ever seen. There's fault on both sides, but at the moment, around the friction, around the financial risk checks, the level of trust about what the commission is saying versus what the government's saying versus what the CRAs are saying versus what the operators know is so low. It makes it very difficult, I think, for the commission and the government to move forward on financial risk checks without antagonizing either huge swathes of the consumer or antagonizing the operators.
So what's the difference between what the commission is saying and what the government is saying?
The government is sticking to its line that what they want to see introduced is a frictionless check on financial risk checks. That is what the government is holding its line to. Now, I think, and that I think is a genuine wish on the part of the Tories not to introduce a level of check which might be seen to be big brotherish. I don't think that they want to be the party that introduces checks that stop people from betting. The commission has taken that line and says, yeah, we can deliver frictionless checks. We're talking to the CR agencies about frictionless checks, but they know full well that the checks that they're talking about are not frictionless and they involve a level of intrusion. So either they're not telling the government what they know to be the truth, or the government's willfully not listening to what they know to be the truth, or the government's lying as well.
So, okay, let's play devil's advocate for a minute, right? And let's imagine I work for a big boss. My big boss comes in with, hey, we want to do this, and it's this, this big audacious kind of thing. And if you say no, that's not possible. Your boss is going to, how would you put it? He's not going to like that. We should be thinking big. We should be pushing ahead. And typically the best way to manage your boss would be to say, well, all right, let me get on that and I'll get into the details and we'll see how we can make that happen. Right. So it's kind of, you approach with a positive thing. And then as you start unpacking it, you come back with the reality of, okay, it's not frictionless, but here's how we can make it as low friction as possible. So your stated aims were X. I can get you to X minus 2.
Yeah.
Rather than publicly arguing with your boss and saying, that's impossible, you're stupid, this is outrageous demands, and possibly even, given the current setup, like if you don't like your boss, wait 6 months and there's probably a change in government. Or a change in minister portfolios or stuff as well. So there seem, so is it not just like classic, just organization, management, dealing?
Yes, it is. But I think I take your point, and I think you're absolutely right. It is quite a case of somewhere up the chain, somebody's demanding something that's actually impossible, and it's a matter of somebody has to implement.
And we've all had that. We've all had that boss, right? I don't know about you two, but I know have had that a few times.
I've heard rumors that you are that boss.
And then sometimes.
You should see what John says. Ron, you should see what Ron says behind your back.
We all know it's true, though.
But sometimes you surprise yourself as well, and you do achieve it. Right? But that's the annoying thing.
What the crucial factor is I think that's all very well, and if this was happening in a vacuum, it just becomes a policy debate around frictionless checks and gets pretty boring. It's pretty boring. It's like you say, it's kind of, just admit it and do the open banking thing and bang, you're done. But the problem is that the public have become involved via the Racing Post. And you might well complain that the Post is over-egging its position here, maybe. But there is genuine concern among their readership, and that is the betting public, around these checks. And where that has an impact is those people that are unhappy around having any kind of friction involved in their checks. They are happy about being tested about affordability, and despite the fact that the government has tried to change the playing field by calling it financial risk checks versus affordability, it's still known as an affordability check, and that reeks of Big Brother, big statism. And I don't think the Racing Post audience likes that. And I think that I noticed today that the petition that has been drawn up by British Racing to complain around, to ask the government to think again around affordability checks, is now up to like 70,000 people. And I know in the bigger scheme of things, that's not in the millions, it's not a huge revolt. But in terms of the betting public, that's quite a sum of people that are not happy with what the government is proposing, or not happy with what they're being told about what the government's proposing. And that has an impact. And I think that's where it becomes more interesting, I think, as a journalist looking at it. You go, well, hang on, there's a populist movement here which doesn't like what they're being told that has to happen. And I don't think the Commission is listening to those people, despite the fact that their mission is to represent those people. And I don't think that and it's not being driven by the operators here. The operators couldn't do a campaign like this. It's only the Post that would be in a position to genuinely talk to consumers about this kind of things.
So, okay, I've a couple of thoughts. So one of the things you said at the beginning was we're being super strict on definitions of frictionless checks and what frictionless is. At the beginning, when you started this, you talked about that the Racing Post readers are the betting public. And if we're being strict on definitions, there are a portion of them, and predominantly horse racing would be their audience. So it is a subset of the overall betting public, not the betting public. And just like we're being strict on definitions, and I think just it's representing a certain set of public, and obviously it's the Racing Post, so they're probably the higher value customers. They're going to be the customers more impacted by any sort of check, higher staking, higher frequency of bets, all of these things. So it's very different than Sky Bet's, £2 ACCA customer on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Type punters. And the way what I'm curious about, because it's because I read the petition, the petition, and there was kind of a couple of points trying to be made in the petition, and one was very much that this is going to kill horse racing. and it's the death of the horse racing. This will cause the death of the horse racing industry.
Yeah.
How?
Well, this is again. So you kind of said it there. That what the reasoning here is that it's the higher end punter that will be hit by this, and that they will not. They will go offshore. And again, this comes down to questions around what the Commission says around black markets versus what the reality of the ground is. The people that, and if those people that are part of that 70,000 people who signed the petition, if among those is, like you say, the higher end, the higher value customers, and they end up not betting onshore and going offshore in some kind of way, whether that be through WhatsApp groups or offshore sites, then racing suffers because it doesn't get the levy. And that's why that racing has been agitated about this, because they don't want to lose that core customer.
Got it. So,
and also, just before you interrupt there, John, or intervene or whichever, once that audience is gone, it ain't coming back.
So going offshore, absolutely a key risk of any over regulation in the market. 100%. There's, gambling with bitcoins or doing whatever you want to do offshore is totally doable.
Yeah.
How many, and if we were talking about football or casino, I would say absolutely. Offshore operators' ability to offer markets on horse racing, is that really, are there, and excuse, I it's not something I would know too much about, but are there really, because it's such a complicated product to manage and it's so easy to get turned over on horse racing by knowledgeable punters.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing.
Really, is it really out there for that? Horse racing?
Yes, it is. First of all, I think to assume that it's such a complicated product that the offshore market can't somehow do horse racing, I think would be that goes against everything we know about the entrepreneurship within the betting and gaming space, to be honest with you. So that's one thing. The other thing that kept cropping up in conversations after the event is this thing about WhatsApp betting, WhatsApp groups. I don't know if you're aware of this, and I'm not exactly sure how this works.
If in countries like Turkey, like the Telegram groups, or Eastern Europe, like the Telegram betting groups are huge.
Well, and that's what I'm, what people are saying, what people were saying after the event was everybody involved in, a certain level in terms of UK horse racing and betting knows people who know people who can put you in touch with people on those groups. Now, they're offering very frictionless betting. You might not trust it, and you might find the return path is somewhat limited. Yeah. But
the returns are high friction.
Yeah, but that is not the point at this stage. I think I think also, as you say, there's a whole world of black market out there that is primed to pick up business in these ways, in whichever country you're talking about. And I think to blithely, and I'm not saying you to say this, Fintan, but the impression I get from what the Commission has said publicly and what your previous guest, Andrew Rhodes, says, is that they dismiss the threat of black markets because it comes from the operators, and they're saying, well, there's no such thing. And even if there is such a thing, we're cracking down on it in a way. They're not, and they haven't got a clue. And I don't think that they know. They don't know where the money might go, and arguably they probably don't care.
So there's a couple of things. So they are cracking down. So it's public knowledge that Gambling Commission is submitting DMCA requests where websites, offshore websites or affiliates promoting offshore websites are being removed from the Google search results.
Yeah.
So there is that happening literally right now. And it's quite an interesting one to follow. I do agree, like rich people, like high net worth punters always have options. And they'll always be easily able to find somebody to take their bets somewhere. That's never going to be a problem for a VIP or for a high staking punter. So there's absolutely an offshore risk for those customers because it's so lucrative. So like you talk about entrepreneurship, somebody will take that risk and take that bet. Go for it, John.
Couple of questions, right? And as ever, they might be stupid ones, right? We've talked about frictionless and the very precise definition of frictionless as in being without friction. So we've got the check that's part of the onboarding thing, which is, pretty important. Is this a real person? Now we're talking about a check further down the line when somebody wants to stake X amount. It's almost like a proof of funds, I suppose, or proof of income or whatever, right? Now, there is to be a relatively low level of friction in that check. In theory, if like the top bollocks way of doing this is taken on, right? If it's an open banking thing, the level of friction is still pretty much fuck all. Let's be realistic about this. Now, why are we talking about a bunch of absolutely fucking delicate little flowers that are going to go, I'm not going to give you permission for that. I shall take my money and I shall fuck off. Are we seriously saying that people are going to have their noses put so far out of joint by having to do I give you permission to check that I can do this?
I don't think that's. I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think that is the nature of the
but
check.
Then why would they go offshore if there's
no? But what I'm saying is we don't. We don't know. We don't know what the government is going to be. What's going to be in the final regs. So we don't know about what this tiny step might be. We literally don't know, and nobody's telling us. And that's a problem.
They don't know yet.
Well, yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? You're saying, it's going to be this tiny little step. We don't know. It might not be this tiny little step.
I'm saying let's think it's best case scenario. Open banking, it's what Charles Cohen and Jeremy Lever and all of those guys are talking about. Let's say it's a savvy step. It's done in the smartest way it can possibly be.
Yeah, I fully believe that what Department of Trust are talking about, what Analytics are talking about, what ClearStake are talking about, and others, is genuinely, as you say there, a limited ticker box and away you go. But it does involve people ticking a box which says, I'm going to allow this gambling operator to have a look at my bank statements. That's what it says. Now, you might say, well, that's just a tick in the box, and who's going to worry about that? But you are saying somewhere explicitly on the screen, I'm going to allow gambling operator A to look at my bank account details. That a lot of people will not like that, and you can, no matter what, how you phrase that, that looks like an intrusion too far for people who just want to make a small bet. That's my point, and I think that,
or a big bet.
Or a big bet, but you have to minimize what that means. I think is to misunderstand why it might be there in the first place. The reason why they want to have these checks is because they want to try and minimize problem gambling, and they think that this is the route to it, and
that to maximize AML and all of that jazz.
That's a slightly different argument. But if explicitly they've said it's about trying to lower problem gambling rates. they think that financial risk checks are a way of lowering problem gambling rates. Now, the point about this is if you lose a certain cohort of customers offshore, problem gambling rates will get worse, not better. You just won't be able to measure it.
Well, the official statistics will get better.
Yeah, on the
Well,
plus side,
but that's is that from a government point of view, from a regulator point of view, is that a good outcome?
No, and this is the thing. This is like there's a famous story from Listerine, right? I'm going to go completely off tangent for a second. A famous story for Listerine, the mouthwash, and they brought in this consultant, and his job was to help them increase sales. And his analysis, his conclusion was, people who use mouthwash when they brush their teeth are, law-abiding, follow the rules type people. If we want to increase sales of Listerine, all we need to do is double the size of the cap that we put on the bottle. And we just move the line and make it bigger. So all of a sudden, all of these law-abiding customers are using more Listerine every time they rinse their mouth. Right? And he doubled sales, and he's genius, and he went off and had an amazing career and did loads of really clever stuff like that. Lots of different companies. If we take these checks, and if we're saying it's trying to solve problem gambling, if I'm a problem gambler and I can't afford to gamble with any bookie in the UK, I'm still going to find somewhere to bet.
Yeah.
Right? And it'll be wherever.
Yeah.
If I'm a law-abiding citizen and I'm betting within my means, I'm probably going to be a bit annoyed or a bit frustrated, but I'll just kind of crack on. And this, to your point of like, this isn't going to solve problem gambling.
No.
It might reduce some people who are showing risk behaviors and are kind of heading on a trajectory, and maybe it can kind of slow velocity down and stuff. But problem gamblers, people with an issue, this is literally just going to force them to go either their local, bookie.
Yeah, Fitch, you're dead right. There's no. Sorry to be Johnny negative for a minute here, but it's very difficult to see why the only step in the RG journey that this is useful in is stopping somebody at the point at which they're going to lose their fucking house. Do you know what I mean? It's the point at which they're literally betting everything to try and recoup their losses or whatever to stop them doing that. And in that instance, if somebody is at that point of desperation, then they've already been let down at so many other stages. This is almost irrelevant. Every operator working with a license should have been seeing the patterns that have led them here long before. And that could be minutes before, but way before they get to this point, because problematic behavior is generally exhibited as soon as somebody opens an account. It doesn't take a month. I don't care what anybody says. The problematic behavior starts straight away generally. So whenever I've been reading about affordability checks, I have always come to the conclusion that the primary reason for it is about AML. And I've never looked at it and thought seriously about it being to do with RG, because it doesn't make sense apart from in a barrel scraping sort of way.
No, you should talk to the commission about that, because that's not what they're saying.
Fuck if
only you'd had. But it's at the level of £125 a month. That's not AML. That's not an AML check.
No, it's not.
No.
So that's a problem gambling check. And that's a financial risk check. To use their term, that's a financial risk check. To use the term of the Racing Post, that's an affordability check. That's what we have. That's what the government have put forward. That's what we're gonna have at some level. The question now is how they get to have that, to perform that check.
Yeah.
And whether that has any impact on problem gambling rates, which are very hard to measure in the first place, and where we don't have an official measure. And I know that you've had previous conversations. I know Jon in particular has talked about the way that the industry sometimes promotes the idea that going from 0.4 to 0.3% is some kind of huge decrease in problem gambling rates when effectively it's just a rounding error.
It was literally a rounding.
That was Fintan.
It's a rounding.
He's the brains of this operation.
I was three decimal places.
But it's important to in the round to see that you have this, whatever way you cut it, unless you're a health safety jihadi, the rates of problem gambling are low. They're very low, and measuring them is a difficult task. And measuring the rate to the degree to which people are affected by problem gambling is a very difficult task. And using blunt measures like saying this has caused X many suicides is not the way to convince us about problem gambling rates. And if you don't have a measure of problem gambling, then why do you introduce something like a frictionless check, or why do you introduce a financial risk check to affect that rate which you can't even measure? That seems to be a policy chasing its tail, to be honest with you.
Well, that has thrown the cat amongst the pigeons.
It's a very good point.
And I think in those circumstances, the collateral damage when it comes to the betting public is being little understood, and is potentially even more damaging, even by their own terms, is even more damaging than they would admit.
To try and give a counterpoint is, okay, so I guess measuring problem gambling is super difficult, super difficult. It's a very secret.
You've got a really good questionnaire.
Well, it's or like who actually does surveys over the phone when somebody calls you, kind of thing, or fills in questionnaires.
I used to love it when I get a call, somebody phoning me up and saying, "So tell me how much you drink a week." I'm drunk now.
So it's very difficult to collect the data. We've had a lot of people on over the last couple of years from different gambling addiction charities who help people, and they're all reporting they've never been busier. Right? So I know that's very anecdotal and whatever, but if we take that as a leading indicator of, like, there are people with problem gambling issues, and with the proliferation of advertising and everything going on, there's smartphones and all these kind of things. There's definitely something there. Yeah. So, if we're being if we're going to be super strict and say, well, if we can't measure it, we shouldn't try and change it, then that doesn't make sense. We should try and do something.
Absolutely. And I think that where there should be more action is in exactly that point about funding for problem gambling clinics, for the people on the ground that deal with the issues, for funding for the Samaritans, funding for the Citizens Advice Bureau. It's a bit like really railing against tents on streets instead of actually trying to stop the causes of homelessness. And I think that that's where the government is. They're in the range of basically the frictionless checks or financial risk checks are them raging about tents on the seats. Well, yeah. And it's a bit like the debate around advertising. And I can understand people saying, well, it's never been more prevalent, never been more in people's faces. So let's ban gambling advertising. But that doesn't get to the root problem. That doesn't stop. That just takes the tents off the streets.
I think so. Where I was getting to, but then I also see your thing. I completely also agree with your point of, if we're trying to tackle problem gambling, then stuff that basically encourages problem gamblers to go offshore, and where there's literally, they can do whatever they want, and the operators can do whatever they want. That doesn't solve the problem either.
No.
And so it's not getting to the root cause problem of, operators using the markers of harm, interventions.
I think
immediate interventions, the guiding people to the charities or to the organizations that can help with problem gambling, And then particularly we've had Gordon Moody and these people, the people from there on, it's typically the problem gambling is systematic of other underlying issues. And the one that really stuck from the Gordon Moody, for women, a lot of the times it's due to domestic abuse and things like that. So there's other things. So charities that can help with problem gambling, charities can take a holistic view to the patient and helping people get through. So look, it feels like there's some intentions there that make sense, but what is the wider part of, what's the wider plan, and how does it interconnect with everything else? If solving problem gambling is the goal.
I doubt the motives of a lot of the people involved in this debate sometimes, and that particularly when it comes to the government. And I think I do understand that, to use coin a phrase, the Commission has been handed a bad set of cards here. And the operators, obviously, has been detailed time and time again in the past, the operators were not doing themselves any favors on this issue. But now I think you'd probably both agree, in terms of the people you've spoken to in and around the industry, within the gambling industry now, there are more people thinking about these issues than was ever the case before, and thinking seriously about it and trying to be sympathetic to a portion of their customer base that gets into trouble, which probably wasn't the case before. And I think that's a huge, and for that, I would say that the Commission can take its share of credit there, because I think it's pushed and pushed and pushed operators towards becoming more responsible citizens, and it shouldn't stop that. I totally agree that should not stop that work of trying to get trying to iron out some of the more egregious issues that have occurred in the past.
And I think as well, it's been many, many months since there's been a Daily Mail or Guardian VIP scandal or something like that, right? That's progress. Inverted commas. But I think it is. I would hope. Anyway, I probably just jinxed it. But you would hope it's indicative of actual change. And I think as well, just on the horse racing thing, without being, we kind of talked about the impact on the levy and the impact on horse racing. Massive impact on livelihoods, massive impact on the countryside, huge employers, hugely important to so many small towns, so many countrysides.
Who's the huge employers? Like the horse yards?
The horse yards, all the just the infrastructure around, like the guys doing trailers, the vets, it's big. I know for in Ireland, the stud farms and stuff in Ireland, huge employers. Huge employers.
They do employ a lot of people, and all the people I know that have ever worked in a horse yard have been earning below minimum wage when it's all worked out. So I don't buy that argument about them being major employers. It's a common one that's trotted out when people talk about stopping the hunt and all of that shit. Do you know what I mean? I grew up in a town where there is at least an annual hunt. And I actually lived on the estate where the hunt originated. And they were lovely people, mostly. But that thing about supporting jobs, well, why exactly are the fucking people that work on the fucking hunt shaking buckets on the day of the hunt? Oh, it's because you're not actually paying them a livable wage. Not even fucking close. It's that thing about being a... It's like, I see this thing about...
They love horses and they probably do.
Yeah, so that exploits that.
Yeah.
That's reprehensible.
So does the writing industry, the acting industry, the fashion industry, anything where there's huge demand for...
gambling affiliate space.
Argument.
We don't work for free.
They're very, very well. Have you seen the hats those people wear?
Yeah. branded baseball hats, mate, all the way, all the way.
But it's like, you see the stats, and it's like the racing industry puts 4.1 billion into the economy each year. I think you should probably hang on to a bit of that and pay people properly. I'm sure there are plenty of places that do pay people. I'm not sure of that, actually.
Look, I think they're big business, like they're run like businesses. It's a
big business, and there's a lot of money at the top end.
There's not a lot of money.
There's a lot more than there is at the bottom end.
It's like owning a football club kind of thing. It's not a get rich business.
Uh-huh.
Is that why so many American investment groups are buying football clubs?
Wow,
because there's no money in it.
No, because they want to create a fucking American-style franchise system where you can't get relegated and then lock in. Like, you own an American football club, you're a billionaire. Is the thing. But that's why they need the rich people to come in and buy the horses and bankroll and stuff. It's a very tough way to make a living. And for so many, it's done just out of pure love for the animals and for racing, right? It's a very different.
Not because they want to feed themselves or pay their bills. Gotcha. They could just eat hay.
Who?
Yeah.
What the
people that work there. Yeah. A bit of hay soup.
Let them eat hay. Let's make that the fucking.
That's the slogan.
Ooh. Let's have that as our merch. Let them eat hay.
Yeah.
We'll do it as a Cobra Kai fucking dojo type thing.
Yeah, Horse Fang Dojo. Now you're talking. Excellent. I do just want to make one small point about, and I'm not dissing the Racing Post when I say this, okay?
But
my worry is that when you have the Racing Post, right? You say, like, okay, so the Racing Post, they're the only people that could represent the punters in this way because they're the only publication of its type, kind of thing. They also have a strong commercial interest in their advertisers and partners, maybe not wanting any kind of friction in their checks because of the worries that we've already talked about. So I do think it should probably be stated that they're not without bias, and that that bias is has a commercial reason.
Yeah, but it's not exactly hidden.
Because
that's not hidden.
But
it's got the adverts plastered all over the paper.
I'm not saying it's hidden. Not saying it's hidden, but somebody out there might not know what the Racing Post is, or blah. But
very few people would not understand what the Racing Post is.
We've got readers in a surprising number of countries, and I think Armenia is a big growth market for us.
Get it.
But my point is, very simply, that sometimes when things are reported, they trade on a level of, or on a lack of knowledge, and can be alarmist. And that generates clicks, generates ads, etc. And your classic example is dog bites. Now, I guarantee you several people will be bitten by dogs today. Very often, it's dogs that are owned by arseholes or people who are acting like arseholes. Because dogs are generally pretty decent beings. But it does happen, and when it happens, it's generally life-changing for everybody involved. And we're seeing at the moment with a breed, I think it's the Bully XL. It's a big, 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 strong dog. And there's been some fatal dog attacks. Now, it's not really about the size of the dog as to whether an attack is fatal. It's more about the size of the person. But these things do actually happen all the time, all over the world, with all different breeds. But sometimes they are over-reported. There is usually a knee-jerk reaction to it, hence there are several breeds in the UK that are banned, for example. And part of my worry is that there is a knee-jerk reaction to the Post coverage of this from punters, when in fact it's an alarmist reaction to something that we don't know yet is there to be alarmed about. See what I mean? It's like they're getting their retaliation in first.
Well,
which any good dojo would do. Certainly the Horse Fang dojo. It's our ethos.
Yes. Well, I've got some sympathy with what the Post is trying to do on this, and I think that it's a genuine response to concerns on part of their readership.
But it's something that we did bring up when we were talking to Andrew Rhodes, Fintan, that the punter actually doesn't have anything like a seat at the table. They really don't, and that's bonkers. And that's actually something I brought up in conversation with him, not on the podcast. That it's madness that there is no body for a seat at the table for punters, and not just for the people that shout the loudest. For the average everyday, here's what's bothering us.
Well, also, I mean, just on that issue. Sorry, just on the issue of the commissioners that they appointed the other day. Not one person has any experience of the gambling industry.
Yeah, I don't actually think enough's been made of that point. Yeah. So you can have lots of experience in the law, but there are plenty of people out there who have experience in the law and in the gambling industry.
Yeah, not one.
Just because you've worked in it doesn't make you sympathetic. No. A job to do is a job to do. Let's assume that people that have and do work in the industry have the intelligence to understand what a role requires. We're not sycophants.
And I'm not work in the industry. Yeah, and naming no names, but I've heard rumours that that effectively the commission pedalled back on suggestions from the government of people that might be fitted for the role, and they made no effort to contact them.
Are you suggesting that me and Fintan would have been approached?
That's why we didn't get the call, John.
That would explain a lot.
Politics.
Always the politics, sexy. Fintan. Too sexy, and obviously not the right dojo. If we'd gone to the Eat and Fang dojo, we would have been in. Damn it.
Hate those guys.
Fucking bastards.
We've now got mortal enemies. We have to fight them on sight.
But listen, I just want to say I'm not dissing the Racing Post at all, because the punter doesn't have a voice, and if this is the punter getting a voice, then fucking go for it.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people who do have a voice and have a very loud voice and can be a little bit shrill at times, or alarmist.
Sometimes only bats can hear them.
Yeah. So I do think sounds completely reasonable. Somebody representing the punter would actually make complete sense. And because otherwise it is that very kind of nanny state, we know what's best for you type thing, which is massively offensive. Because, given the amount of tax you pay, representation is important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Scott Longley, thank you very, very much for joining us. It's a very interesting conversation. Congratulations on another successful event. Is it running next year?
Yes, it is, John.
Or do we know now that reputation does matter?
It does matter, but we'll be talking about it again next October or November.
Next year is going to matter even more.
Indeed. Thank you, Thank you indeed, Mr. John Bruford. Thank you very much, Fintan Costello.
Oh, Scott I didn't get the Mr. Did you notice that? Oh,
yeah.
Noted.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But it's like when somebody calls you chief. It's not a compliment.
It just means they forgot your name.
It can mean that. It can also mean that they're calling you a cock.
Oh, really? I call people chief all the time. Honestly, it's just I'm really bad with names. I never saw it as an insult.
There are some areas of the world where the term "little chief" describes your knob.
Oh.
And so
Shropshire. Shropshire, is it, John? Is that the place what you're talking about?
I've been trying really hard to introduce that here.
It was the prison scene in
people chief.
It was the prison scene in Mr. In Between, right?
Mr. In Between. Oh, it's brutal. and hilarious. And oh my God, I hid behind my hands for quite a while. Scott, if you haven't seen it, watch Mr. In Between. It's available on Disney Plus now. And I guarantee you, if you ever have an affordability check, your streaming services, they won't know what you've watched. But anyway.
Brilliant.
Scott, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Swat.
Strike first, strike hard.
There's Fintan getting his retaliation in nice and first. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Gambling Files podcast, please find us on LinkedIn. Give us a big, juicy, succulent like. That nearly went wrong. You can find us under the name The Gambling Files Podcast. You can find us on Twitter under The Gambling Files. I think the handle is just @GamblingFiles. You can connect to myself, John Bruford, or Fintan Costello, also on LinkedIn. We're also both on Twitter. And you can find all of our previous episodes at www.thegamblingfiles.com. If you enjoyed it, please share, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues, and we'll see you next time.